Okay, all right. We don't only have cast, but we also have Brett Pollock, our DP, and Joel P. West, who did all of our music and movies. We have John Gallagher Jr. Please make it good.
Couple of questions to give you guys a moment. I think the thing that really affected me the most when I saw this is the characters are amazing and very well rounded, and the film itself is injected with a lot of emotion, but also a lot of kind of like subtle humor. And how was the writing process for you? And you know, did you kind of write parts for any of these people that you ended up casting in mind? And how, you know, did you get this amazing cast?
Great question. There's a lot packed into that question. The writing process was long. I wrote one really not so good draft of this movie, and then rewrote it completely. And it was over the course of about a year and a half. A lot of it was bouncing ideas off of Asher Goldstein, who was the first producer who believed in the project from the beginning, when the script honestly was not very good. Over the course of that time, I think a lot of that was working out some of those scenes that maybe didn't feel so believable, or adding things that might make it feel make more sense. But honestly, like the authenticity of these performances are 100% due to these guys, and their ability to project things that they are feeling in the moment onto the screen, and it was such a privilege for me to experience that with them.
I just want to talk about, I guess, maximal emotions, but it's kind of a minimalistic style, I think, a lot of this. And so I guess I want to salute and hear a little from both the actors on how to put it out there and yet restrain. You as a director, you could have made it a lot more showy. You as a cinematographer, you got one, slow-mo shot at the end, and as a composer, it was amazingly minimalistic and powerful. So how do you do such an emotional story and yet kind of pull back or trust it?
Great question. Can you guys hear that question in the back?
Yeah.
I'm glad he talks very loudly. I'll let these guys answer it.
I don't know. So much of it, I have to say, because he won't, is that when you have someone like Destin at the helm, it makes everything. It clarifies everything so much more for what you have to do for your job. And so, just from reading the script for the first time, I knew that it was, like you said, it was something that was really emotional, but it was really special because it managed to have moments that are of heightened drama and high stakes without teetering over the edge into something like melodrama, which you lose the trust of the audience through that, and you kind of ruin everything that you're setting up by trying to tell a story about real life. And then I watched the short, which I don't know if a lot of people know, but it's based on a short film that Destin wrote and directed several years ago, which Brett also shot. And when I saw that, I knew I had absolute trust of just follow this guy's lead, and the rest of it would come into play. And then meeting everybody else that he cast and meeting Bree, it was just so apparent that if we just followed each other's lead, that we were going to stay on the same page.
Yeah, for me, the aesthetic actually came from the short that Destin and I did together. And that aesthetic of the short came from the fact that we really, the budget went to film stock and nothing else, not even lighting or anything. So I went with just this documentarian, natural approach with just natural lighting. And when we got to do the feature version, I really just kind of wanted to keep the heart of that in the feature. I think it worked really well. It was kind of a big learning experience for me to be a DP and, like you said, really restrain from, trying to overlight and do too much. There's a really great contrast of, such a strong emotional movie, which a short had, but it was very just less is more. So I really just held back and let them do, what they do, and hope that they kind of carry the visuals as well, just as much as, I tried to. So, Joel, music.
Yeah, so basically the same kind of process happened with the music. I think most commonly music is used in film to help the audience know what you're supposed to feel, but I think one of the most powerful things about this film is that it's really true to being new to a facility like this, where it's loaded with emotion, but you don't really know what you're supposed to be feeling. It's kind of confusing. So a lot of it was studying the music, like the original ideas that we had to try and figure out how to make them really nondescript, basically just emotional without really letting you know what emotion it's supposed to be. And then more than anything, the overall process of scoring this was, the first third was kind of coming up with a score for the whole 90-minute movie, and then the other 2/3 we spent months just taking things away, taking notes away, taking whole cues away, taking instruments away. And every time we did a test screening, we just were like, was this, and we just kept stripping it back, and really just found that the performances spoke for themselves. So just kind of the more we took away, the stronger it was.
This film felt very honest and very personal and real. I was wondering if you had any experience, like first on helping these kids, or if you were one of these kids in the film.
He was asking about if I had experience with this world. It was my first job out of college, actually. I was not so dissimilar from the new guy in this movie. And I honestly, like within the first couple of weeks, I said probably a number of much more inappropriate things than he did on his first day, thinking that it was like the right thing to say. And over the course of that first year working there, I mean, looking back, I cannot believe the person that I was before I started working there, and I'm so happy for that experience, because I was very naive, and hearing those stories over the course of the year and a half that I worked there was just a very life-changing experience for me.
A question for the actor playing Marcus. I love that scene. That head shaking scene in the mirror was just great. And I just want to know, what was your preparation for that scene? And honestly, what was your preparation for the Marcus character? Because he's a really internal character, and like you said, it doesn't say a lot. So what you carry kind of
I think it's one thing if you run up to somebody and you're like, "Fuck you!" Like that's one thing, but then it's another thing if it comes from the sort of place it's like, "Yeah, man, and fuck you!" It's a different trip, and I think naturally it comes from a deeper, a quieter place. It's not so overstated, and so like it just really came from a natural place. And as far as the crying scene, I mean, don't do the trick. No, I mean, we all feel these emotions, and if you can just make that part of yourself come forward, then you can execute it. So I'm not special.
What were the artistic influences in the creative process? Mainly cinematic influences, if there were any, but any to the direction. Any influences would work, but mainly cinematic.
Just any influences.
Yeah.
I have a lot of influence from my mom.
But like artistically?
I watch a lot of documentaries. I've directed a couple docs. I love a lot of movies. I actually have been playing catch up on movies ever since I left the island of Maui where I grew up, because the only things that usually reached there was Jurassic Park out there, and most Spielberg movies made out there. And my first movie that I saw on Maui, which honestly was a huge, momentous, life-changing experience, was Inner Space.
Great movie.
If you haven't seen that movie,
Great movie.
It is mind-blowing for a 12-year-old boy.
Cried.
Yeah, so I mean, this movie was very personal. So most of the influences came from my experiences, and then interviews that I did with people and who work in places like this, and that's kind of where the emotional tone comes from. Is I mean, one 4-hour interview that I recorded with someone who had been working and still works in a place like this was, I mean, you could hear me laughing so hard that I was almost falling off my chair, and then 5 minutes later, I'm just in tears with just this guy's stories. That he's just telling me stories, and that was kind of the inspiration, I guess, for this for the tone of the movie, which kind of tries to mimic that experience a